I've always been the kind of person who finds comfort in the predictable. The steady rhythm of my life, like the metronome of my heart, has been my sanctuary. My name is Isabella, and at 32, I've crafted a life that many would envy. I'm a pharmacist, a profession that demands precision and care, qualities I've woven into every aspect of my existence. I live in a quaint suburban home, the kind with white picket fences and flower beds that bloom with the seasons here. With Theodore, my husband, an engineer with a mind as sharp as the tools he uses, and Jack, our loyal German shepherd, I've built a fortress of normalcy every morning as the first light of dawn creeps through our bedroom curtains. I rise to the sound of Theodore's alarm. He's an early riser, always has been. I prepare breakfast, something simple yet comforting, like oatmeal with a hint of cinnamon or eggs with a sprinkle of chives. Theodore, with his easy smile, takes Jack for their morning run. Their silhouettes, a familiar sight against the backdrop of our neighborhood. Waking up our days are a well-rehearsed dance. Theodore heads to work, his mind already on the projects that await him, while I manage the pharmacy, ensuring that every prescription is filled with the utmost care. The hours pass, each one ticking away with the precision of a well-oiled clock. Evenings are our time. Theodore returns home, his face lighting up when he sees me, and Jack bounds around his tail, a blur of excitement. We sit at the kitchen table, the one we picked out together, discussing our day. His voice, steady and warm, fills the room as he talks about his work, the challenges, the triumphs. I share my own tales, the quirky customers, the satisfaction of helping someone feel better. After dinner, we often settle in front of the TV, a movie playing softly in the background, or we take Jack for a leisurely walk in the park with its sprawling green, and the pond where ducks glide has become our sanctuary, a place where time seems to stand still, where our bond deepens with each shared silence. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, there's a storm brewing, a secret that could unravel everything we've built. It's not the kind of secret that's whispered in the dark corners of a bar, or shared in the intimacy of a late-night conversation. It's a secret that lives in the shadows of my mind, growing with each passing day, a silent tempest threatening to upend our lives. I've always been good at keeping things in order, at maintaining the balance. Yet this secret, this betrayal, has begun to seep into the cracks of our perfect life. It started innocently enough, for so I thought, a late-night text here, a secretive smile. There are moments that seemed inconsequential at first. But as the days turned into weeks, these small anomalies began to form a pattern I couldn't ignore. Theodore, with his unwavering trust in me, has no idea how could he? He sees the life we've built, the love we share, the routine that has become our comfort. But I see the signs, the subtle shifts in his behavior, the way he sometimes looks at his phone with a guarded expression, the times he comes home later than usual, his excuses growing more elaborate. I've tried to dismiss it, to tell myself that I'm imagining things, that our love is stronger than any doubt. But doubt, like a weed, has taken root, and no amount of rational thought can uproot it entirely. Every time I see him, my heart races, not with joy, but with a mix of fear and suspicion. The secret isn't just about Theodore. It's about me too, about the choices I've made, the paths I've taken. It's about the woman I've become, the one who now stands at the precipice of a decision that could change everything. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a tale of trust, of the silent battles we fight within ourselves, of the masks we wear to protect those we love. And as I sit here in our cozy home with the life I've so carefully curated, I wonder how long I can keep this storm at bay, how long before the truth, like a hurricane, tears through our lives. Click to find out what secret Isabella is hiding. One sunny Saturday, Theodore decided to surprise me with a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the mountains. The idea was to reconnect away from the daily grind. We packed our bags, loaded Jack into the car, and set off. The drive was filled with laughter, and the kind of easy conversation that comes from years of companionship. Upon arriving, the cabin was everything we hoped for. Rustic, isolated, with a large fenced yard where Jack could roam freely. That evening we cooked dinner together, and as the night deepened, Theodore suggested we take advantage of the privacy and make love under the stars. It was a beautiful moment, one that felt like it would last forever. The next morning I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside our window. Theodore was already up brewing coffee in the kitchen. I stretched, feeling the cool mountain air through the open window, and joined him. He handed me a mug, his smile warm and inviting. "I thought I'd let you sleep in," he said, kissing my forehead. "After breakfast." Theodore mentioned he needed to make a quick run into town for some supplies. "We forgot." "It shouldn't take long," he assured me, grabbing his keys. "Why don't you take Jack for a walk in the yard? He's been cooped up in the car for too long." I nodded, watching as he drove off, the dust from the gravel road settling behind him. Jack was already at the door, eager for his adventure. I opened it, and he bounded out, his tail wagging furiously. The yard was expansive, surrounded by towering pines that whispered secrets in the wind. I watched Jack chase after squirrels, his joy infectious. But as the minutes turned into an hour, then two, my mind began to wander. The peace of the morning was replaced by a creeping unease. Theodore had said it would be quick. I tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Sitting on the porch steps, I felt the weight of my suspicions growing heavier. The isolation of the cabin, which had seemed so romantic last night, now felt like a trap. I thought about the secret of smiles, the late nights, the excuses here in this quiet. It was as if the cabin itself was amplifying my doubts, echoing them back to me with every rustle of leaves. Jack returned, panting, dropping a stick at my feet. I threw it for him, but my heart wasn't in the game. My thoughts were elsewhere, on Theodore, on the secrets that might be lurking just beneath the surface of our perfect life. The sun was high. When I heard the sound of a car approaching, relief washed over me. But it was quickly replaced by a new tension. Theodore stepped out of the car, his face unreadable. He carried a bag of groceries, but his eyes didn't meet mine right away. "Sorry that took so long," he said, finally looking at me. "I ran into an old friend from college, and we got to talking." His voice was casual, but there was something in his tone, a slight hesitation that didn't sit right with me. I nodded, forcing a smile. "That's okay. Jack and I had a good time." But inside, my mind was racing, an old friend here in this remote place. We spent the rest of the day in a forced normalcy, cooking lunch, taking a hike. But the undercurrent of my suspicions wouldn't subside every time. Theodore checked his phone every time he seemed distracted. My heart clenched with fear and doubt that evening, as we sat by the fire. I couldn't help but watch him, searching for signs, for anything that might confirm or deny my fears. The flames danced, casting shadows that seemed to mimic the turmoil within me. Theodore reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I love you, Mega," he said, his voice earnest. But all I could think was, asterisk. Do you really, asterisk? The night deepened, and as we lay in bed, I listened to Theodore breathing steady and deep, but sleep eluded me. My mind was a storm of thoughts, each one more unsettling than the last. What if this weekend was his way of buying time, of keeping me distracted while he sorted out his own secrets? I turned to look at him, his face peaceful in sleep, and felt a pang of sadness. This man, whom I loved so deeply, was now a puzzle I couldn't solve. The trust that had been our foundation felt like it was cracking, and I was left wondering how much longer I could hold on to the pieces. The cabin, with its promise of solitude and reconnection, had instead become a mirror reflecting the fractures in our relationship. And as the night stretched on, I knew that whatever happened next this weekend would mark a turning point, for better or for worse. The next morning, Theodore received an urgent call from work requiring him to return to the city immediately. He was apologetic, promising to return as soon as possible. I reassured him, saying I'd be fine with Jack for company. After Theodore left, I decided to spend the day outdoors, enjoying the solitude. I let Jack out into the yard, and while he played, I lay on a blanket reading a book. The sun was warm, the air fresh, and I felt a strange sense of freedom. As the day wore on, I found myself increasingly relaxed, perhaps too relaxed, in a moment of what I can only describe as a lapse in judgment. Influenced by the isolation and the wine I had been sipping, I engaged in an act with Jack that I never imagined I would. I had always seen Jack as more than just a pet. He was family, a protector and a friend. But in that moment, under the influence of the wine and the overwhelming solitude, I crossed a line I never thought I would. I let Jack lick my face, something he often did. But this time I didn't stop him. When his tongue ventured further to places that were intimate, it was a fleeting moment, a blur of confusion and guilt, and I quickly pushed him away, feeling a rush of shame and self-disgust. The rest of the day was spent in a haze of regret. I couldn't shake the feeling of having betrayed not just Theodore, but myself and our life together. The cabin, which had seemed like a sanctuary, now felt like a prison of my own making. I tried to distract myself by walking through the woods, the crunch of leaves underfoot, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my mind. Jack followed his usual exuberance, now a painful reminder of what had just transpired. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, I returned to the cabin, my mind racing with thoughts of confession and fear of the consequences. I couldn't bear the weight of the secret alone. I needed to talk to someone to unborn myself, but who? Theodore was the obvious choice. Yet the thought of his reaction, the potential devastation, made my heart sink. I poured another glass of wine, hoping it would numb the sharp edges of my guilt. Instead, it only sharpened my resolve to confront the situation. I sat at the kitchen table, the one we had picked out together, and stared at my phone. Theodore's last message was a simple, "I'll be back soon, love you." The words felt like a knife twisting in my C*******T. The night grew darker, and with it my resolve weakened. I couldn't tell Theodore, not now, not when he was already dealing with work stress. I decided to keep it to myself, at least until he returned. But the silence of the cabin was deafening, filled with my own thoughts, echoing back at me. I lay in bed, listening to the wind outside, the occasional howl of a distant coyote, and the soft breathing of Jack at the foot of the bed. Sleep was elusive, my mind replaying the day's events, each moment a reminder of my lapse in judgment. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of Theodore's car pulling up. My heart raced as I heard the door open. He entered, his face tired but relieved to see me. "I missed you," he said, pulling me into a hug. I hugged him back, my arms feeling like they were betraying him with every second they held him. We spent the morning together trying to salvage what was left of our getaway. But every touch, every smile from Theodore felt like a lie on my part. The cabin, once a place of potential reconnection, now stood as a monument to my guilt. As we packed to leave, I watched Theodore, his every move, his every word now colored by my secret. The drive back was quiet, the usual laughter and easy conversation replaced by a heavy silence. I glanced at Jack in the back seat, his head out the window, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Back at home, life resumed its routine, but the normalcy was superficial. Every time Theodore left for work, my mind would wander back to the cabin, to that moment of weakness. I found myself watching him more closely, looking for signs of his own secrets, perhaps as a way to justify my own. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of my secret grew heavier. I started to avoid intimacy, fearing that Theodore would sense the change in me. Our conversations became stilted, our interactions cautious. The trust that had been our foundation was now a fragile thing, easily shattered by the slightest misstep. One evening, as we sat watching a movie, Theodore reached for my hand. "You've been distant," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. "Is everything okay?" I swallowed hard, the words stuck in my throat. "To just have a lot on my mind," I managed to say, avoiding his gaze. He nodded, squeezing my hand. "You know, you can talk to me about anything, right?" The irony of his words was not lost on me here. He was offering me an open door to confess, while I was the one harboring a secret that could destroy us. As the night deepened, I lay awake, Theodore's steady breathing beside me, the cabin, the wine, the moment with Jack. It all played in a loop. In my mind, I knew I couldn't keep this from him forever. The truth, like a storm, was brewing, ready to unleash its fury on our lives. But how could I tell him? How could I explain that in a moment of loneliness and weakness, I had betrayed not just him, but everything we stood for? The cabin getaway, meant to strengthen our bond, had instead become the catalyst for a revelation that could unravel everything. And as I lay there, the weight of my secret pressing down on me, I realized that the next step, whatever it would be, would define not just our relationship, but who I was. At my core, the guilt hit me like a tidal wave. The next morning I couldn't look at Jack without feeling a mix of shame and confusion. I cleaned up trying to erase any evidence of my indiscretion, but the mental images haunted me. When Theodore returned, he was none the wiser, his face lit up with joy at seeing me. We spent the rest of the weekend as if nothing had happened, but inside I was crumbling. Back home life resumed its normal pace, but I was different. I started avoiding Jack, which Theodore noticed, questioning if something was wrong between us. My mind was a battlefield torn between confession and concealment. The days that followed were a blur of routine and guilt. Each morning I went through the motions preparing breakfast, seeing Theodore off to work, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying that moment at the cabin. Over and over, the pharmacy, once a place of precision and care, now felt like a stage where I was performing a role. The role of the perfect wife, while inside I was anything but. Theodore's voice when he called during his lunch break was a reminder of the life we had built together, a life now tainted by my actions. "How's your day going, love?" he'd ask, and I'd respond with a rehearsed cheerfulness. "It's going well, just busy as always," but my heart wasn't in it. Every word felt like a betrayal at home. The silence was deafening. I found myself avoiding Jack more than ever. His presence, once a comfort, now served as a constant reminder of my lapse and judgment. Theodore noticed the change. "Isabella, you've been so distant lately, is everything okay?" he asked one evening as we sat at our kitchen table, the one we had picked out together, now feeling like a barrier between us. I forced a smile, my throat tight with unshed tears. "Just work stress." I guess I lied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "But," Theodore, ever the understanding husband, nodded, squeezing my hand. "If you need to talk, I'm here," he said, his eyes full of concern. The nights were the hardest lying in bed next to Theodore, his steady breathing a stark contrast to my racing thoughts. I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I wanted to confess, to unburden myself, but the fear of losing him, of shattering our life, kept the words locked inside. One evening as we watched a movie, I felt his gaze on me. "Isabella, we need to talk," he said, pausing the film. His tone was gentle but firm. My heart skipped a beat. Was he going to confront me about my behavior? About the distance I had put between us? "I've been thinking," he continued. "Maybe we should see a counselor. You've seemed so unhappy and I want to help. I want us to be okay." The suggestion hit me like a punch to the gut. Here was Theodore, trying to fix what he thought was wrong, while I was the one who had truly broken us. "I think that might be good," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The following week, we attended our first session. The counselor, a kind woman with an understanding smile, asked us about our relationship, our communication. Theodore spoke openly about his concerns about how he felt I was pulling away. I listened, my heart heavy, knowing that my issues were not just about communication, but about a deep, dark secret. When it was my turn to speak, I found myself at a crossroads. The counselor's office, with its soft lighting and the scent of lavender, felt like a confessional. "I've been feeling overwhelmed," I started, my voice trembling. "There's something I haven't told Theodore, something from our cabin trip." Theodore's hand found mine, squeezing it in support. "Whatever it is, we can work through it together," he assured me. The words were on the tip of my tongue, the truth about to spill out, but fear gripped me. Instead I said, "I've been feeling like I'm not enough, like I'm failing you." Somehow it was a half-truth, a shadow of the real issue, but it was all I could muster. The session ended with the counselor suggesting exercises to improve our communication, but as we left, I knew I had dodged the real issue. Theodore seemed relieved, thinking we had taken a step forward, but I felt like I was sinking deeper into deceit. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of my secret grew heavier. I avoided intimacy, fearing that Theodore would sense the change in me. Our conversations became stilted, our interactions cautious. The trust that had been our foundation was now a fragile thing, easily shattered by the slightest misstep. One evening, as we sat watching another movie, Theodore reached for my hand. "You've been distant," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. "Is everything okay?" I swallowed hard, the words stuck in my throat. "To just have a lot on my mind," I managed to say, avoiding his gaze. He nodded, squeezing my hand. You can talk to me about anything, right?" The irony of his words was not lost on me here. He was offering me an open door to confess, while I was the one harboring a secret that could destroy us. As the night deepened, I lay awake, Theodore steady breathing beside me. The cabin, the wine, the moment with Jack. It all played in a loop. In my mind, I knew I couldn't keep this from him forever. The truth, like a storm, was brewing, ready to unleash its fury on our lives. But how could I tell him? How could I explain that in a moment of loneliness and weakness, I had betrayed not just him, but everything we stood for? The cabin getaway, meant to strengthen our bond, had instead become the catalyst for a revelation that could unravel everything. And as I lay there, the weight of my secret pressing down on me, I realized that the next step, whatever it would be, would define not just our relationship, but who I was at my core. Would I continue to hide behind half-truths and avoidance? Or would I find the courage to face the consequences of my actions? The decision loomed over me, a dark cloud threatening to burst at any moment. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, I broke down. Theodore, sensing something was deeply wrong, sat me down. With tears streaming down my face, I confessed everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Theodore's face went from confusion to shock, then, to a pained expression of betrayal. He stood up, walked to the window and stared out into the night, his back to me. I could see his shoulders shaking, whether from anger or sorrow I couldn't tell. He turned back, his voice low and broken, asking how he could move forward. From this I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my C********T, Theodore. I've done something unforgivable. Began, my voice barely a whisper. During our time at the cabin, I was alone, and I let my loneliness and the wine cloud my judgment. I did something with Jack that I deeply regret. Theodore's eyes widened, his face palling as he processed my words. You with Jack. His voice was a mix of disbelief and horror. I nodded, the weight of my confession making it hard to speak. I didn't know how to tell you. I've been carrying this guilt, and it's tearing me apart. I'm so sorry, Theodore. I love you, and I've betrayed that love in the worst way possible. He sat back down, his hands covering his face, his body trembling. The room felt like it was shrinking, the air thick with the gravity of my revelation. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Isabella, I need time. I need to think this. This changes everything. The next few days were a blur. Theodore moved to the guest room, and our interactions were minimal, filled with a heavy silence that spoke volumes. I tried to give him space, but the house felt like a mausoleum, each room echoing with the absence of our usual laughter and warmth. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the door opened and Theodore walked in. His face was set, his eyes distant yet determined. Isabella, we need to talk, he said, his voice steady but cold. I nodded, my stomach twisting into knots. He sat across from me, his posture rigid. I've thought a lot about what you told me about us, about everything we've built together. He paused, taking a deep breath. I love you, Mega, but I can't just overlook what happened. It's not just about the act. It's about the trust, the foundation of our relationship. Tears welled up in my eyes again, but I fought them back, knowing I had no right to cry when I was the cause of his pain. I understand, I whispered. I think we need space. Theodore continued, his voice breaking slightly. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while. I need to figure out if I can move past this, if we can rebuild what's been shattered. The thought of him leaving even temporarily felt like a physical blow. What about us? What about our future? Asked, my voice trembling. Theodore looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and resolve. I don't know, Isabella. I really don't. But I need to find out if there's a way back for us. For now, I think it's best if we take some time apart. Maybe with distance we can both see things more clearly. He stood up and I watched him pack a bag, each item he placed in it, feeling like another piece of our life being taken away. When he was ready to leave, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. I'll call you, he said, and then he was gone. The door closing with a finality that echoed through the empty house. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I went through the motions at work, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying our conversation, his departure, the look on his face. I avoided Jack, unable to look at him without the shame overwhelming me. Theodore did call, but our conversations were brief, formal, devoid of the warmth we once shared. He was working through his feelings, he said, and needed more time. I agreed. knowing that rushing would only push him further away. One evening, as I sat alone, the doorbell rang. It was Theodore, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice softer than before. I let him in and we sat at the kitchen table, the one we had picked out together. "I've been thinking a lot." He started, his hands clasped in front of him. "I've talked to a therapist and I've realized that while what you did was wrong, Megan, I also played a part in the distance that grew between us." I was silent, letting him speak. My heart, a mix of hope and dread. "I've decided I want to try," he said, his eyes meeting mine for the first time with a hint of the old warmth. "I want to see if we can rebuild, if we can find a way back to each other. But it's going to take time, and it's going to require both of us to be completely honest and open from now on." Tears of relief and gratitude spilled over as I nodded. "I want that too, Theodore, more than anything." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "We'll need counseling, Mega, and we'll need to set boundaries, especially with Jack. I can't just forget what happened, but I'm willing to try to forgive." The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with the need for healing and rebuilding trust. But for the first time since the cabin, I felt a glimmer of hope, a chance that our love could weather the storm. We agreed to start counseling together to address not just the incident, but the underlying issues that had led us to this point. As Theodore left that night, promising to return soon, I watched him go with a heart that was both heavy and hopeful. The journey to mend what was broken would long, but with Theodore's willingness to try, I knew we had a fighting chance to reclaim the love and trust that once defined us. The days that followed were a blur of therapy sessions, both individual and couples. Theodore decided to stay, but the trust was shattered, and our relationship was now a fragile thing held together by the threads of our past love and the hope for a future. Jack was rehomed with a friend, which was another layer of guilt for me. We learned to communicate more openly, addressing not just the incident, but the underlying issues in our marriage. It was a painful process, but through it we found a new understanding of each other. Our love, though tested, was evolving into something more resilient. The therapy sessions were grueling. Each one felt like peeling back layers of skin, exposing raw wounds that had been festering beneath the surface. Theodore was there, his presence a mix of support and scrutiny. He listened, his eyes often distant, as if he was trying to reconcile the woman he loved with the one who had betrayed him in such an unimaginable way. "I need to understand, Isabella," he said during one session, his voice steady but strained. "I need to know why you felt so alone, so desperate that you would do that." I looked down at my hands, the weight of his gaze making it hard to breathe. "I felt disconnected, Theodore, from you, from us, the cabin, the isolation. It all magnified my loneliness, and the wine. It clouded my judgment. I'm not making excuses, but that's what happened." The therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, nodded. "It's important to recognize these feelings. Theodore, Isabella's actions were wrong, but the emotions leading up to it are part of the healing process." Theodore sighed, running his fingers through his hair, a habit he had when he was stressed. "I know I'm trying, but it's hard to look at you, Isabella, and not see that." I felt the sting of his words, but I knew they were fair. We had agreed to be brutally honest, to lay bare our souls if we were to have any chance at all. Our home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battleground where every room held memories of happier times juxtaposed against the stark reality of our current situation. The kitchen, where we had shared countless meals, now echoed with the silence of our strained interactions. The living room where we used to watch movies was now a place where we sat often in silence, the TV, a mere background noise to our thoughts. One evening, as we sat across from each other at the dinner table, Theodore broke the silence. "I've been thinking about Jack," he said, his voice low. "I know it's not his fault, but I just can't have him here right now." I nodded, understanding his need for space from the reminder of my betrayal. "I've arranged for him to stay with a friend. They have a big yard, and he'll be well taken care of." Theodore looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Thank you," he murmured. And for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I fell in love with, the one who could forgive, who could see beyond the hurt. Therapy continued, and with each session we delved deeper into our issues. We talked about communication, about the pressures of our jobs, about the expectations we had unknowingly placed on each other. Theodore shared his feelings of inadequacy at work, how he felt he was falling behind, which inadvertently distanced him from me. I spoke of my own fears of aging, of losing the spark in our marriage, of feeling like I was just going through the motions. It's not just about what happened to the cabin, the therapist pointed out. It's about reconnecting on a fundamental level. You both need to rediscover what brought you together in the first place. We started doing things together again. Small steps towards rebuilding. A walk in the park, cooking dinner together. Even just sitting and talking without the TV on. Each act felt like a tentative step on a trope, with the fear of falling ever present. One Saturday, we decided to visit a local art museum, something we hadn't done since our dating days. As we walked through the galleries, I felt a shift, a softening in Theodore's demeanor. He pointed out a painting, a vibrant scene of a couple dancing under the stars, much like our night at the cabin. "Remember this?" he asked, his voice tinged with nostalgia. I smiled, the memory bittersweet. "Yes, I do." He took my hand, a gesture so simple yet loaded with meaning. "I want to get back there, Isabella, to that place where we could just be us." Tears pricked at my eyes, not of sadness but of a cautious hope. "I want that too, Theodore, more than anything." As we left the museum hand in hand, I felt the first real glimmer of hope since that fateful weekend. The road ahead was still uncertain, fraught with the need for continued honesty and effort. But in that moment I believed we could make it, that our love, though deeply wounded, could heal the question of whether Megan and Theodore's marriage would survive. This ordeal hung in the air like a delicate balance. Only time would tell if we could truly move past the betrayal, if the love we once shared could be rekindled into something stronger, or if the cracks were too deep to mend. But for now we were trying together to find our way back to each other, to rebuild not just our relationship, but ourselves in the process. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create more engaging stories for you.